Wano is officially over, and it's time for us to discuss. If now that you're at the end of Wano, you're thinking, I need a recap. I need to remember all the major beats, but I don't want to reread all of those chapters. First of all, why? It was a great time. Read it all in bulk. Have fun. But two, I got you covered. I have a Wano sock puppet video that I made. It exists in the world, so it might as well be seen. Today we're going to be discussing Wano as a whole and my thoughts on it. Wano for me holds some scenes that are on par with Oda's best writing. There are scenes and things that were set up and paid off so extraordinarily that even as I was just quickly flipping through chapters to remind myself of some of the major moments, I was still crying over multiple scenes. Incredible highs, as well as some stuff that really let me down. So in this review video, we are going to be discussing Wano, with spoilers obviously, discussing for me, the best moments of Wano, as well as the worst moments, and where that leaves us, or at least where that leaves me. The introduction to Wano was amazing. Getting into Wano and the crew separating, seeing the beautiful landscapes with the revelation of how desolate it is and how much the people are suffering. And it has so many scenes that drive home the themes of Wano, like the one where the people suffering are so strong that we get the panel of the woman weeping as she's about to kill her child to end its suffering, but is stopped right as Luffy and company bring the food. That little scene, that tiny moment that shows the true desperation that these people are in, and that immediately displays Luffy as the person who's coming to bring them that hope, that freedom, that restoration to their country. There were so many little moments like this in the beginning of Wano that in so few panels, in so few words, in such a little amount of time displayed the true state of these people and this country, and then put Luffy right in their path and showed the role that he is in this story. And I think Oda's ability to say a lot in a small space of time, and his ability to set up themes, and his ability to set up stakes and to set up situations very quickly and in tiny little ways all over, that's all over Wano. That doesn't change here. And we also get really exciting and terrifying scenes from the start to show us that we are way over our heads in this country. Not to mention incredible scenes like when Tama was laughing at Orochi and he wanted to kill her for it. At the time, we don't realize that it's his fault that she's laughing here. He's the one who gave her the smile fruit, who gave his people their smile fruit. He not only put a curse on them because their suffering was annoying to him, but whenever their joy that he put them in was annoying to him too, get him out of there. We so quickly saw how cold and callous he was, and with every new revelation of the state that this country was in and of what Orochi has done to them, it only peeled back the layers of how truly despicable this man was. Following all that up with Yatsui's sacrifice, his speech, and the reveal of what the smile fruits really are, then Yatsui being shot, Toki laughing as she rushes to her father, and Hiyori breaking down while she tells Zoro that this that they're living in is truly hell. And then the Straw Hats coming in to save Toki. The sequence that all this played out in, the order of events where we get a very basic understanding of the suffering of these people and why we need to come in and intervene, and then getting just tiny piece by tiny piece that builds up into this tapestry of horror that this country is in. The impact of it, being able to have a character like Yatsui, who was not even on my radar, and so quickly have his death and the consequences of and the reactions of the people as they laugh, as they suffer, as they try to mourn this person that meant so much to them. That entire scene, to me, this is Oda at his best. This This is Oda doing what Oda does. The scene in Udon when they're in prison and the prison guard he commands the people to grab Luffy. And he tells Luffy, I don't need to hit you, I just need to hit one of them. Just openly to their faces saying, you're expendable. Your life is exactly worthless. So grab a hold of him, do what I say, and you'll probably die. And the fact that he so openly says this to these people and their response is to keep holding on, because that's how broken they are. That's how much that they have accepted. This is our lot in life. It's gonna be a terrible end. I'm gonna suffer, but this is what's left of my life. That's the state of mind that the entirety of Wano nearly was in. This state of, I've been beaten down, I've been broken so many times, I've watched my family suffer and die, I'm suffering, it's time for me to die too, in this demoralizing way? Okay. Then Luffy wraps them up and he holds them and he tells them that they can't hurt him, even though that is a lie. And he tells them he's going to be their defender. He takes out their assaulter and then he turns to them and he says, you do the rest. Putting freedom back into their hands. And we follow this up immediately after their freedom was restored. The one that they've been waiting for appears. And they all drop to their knees and they start crying because now their hope has been restored too. But that's not all. Parallel to all the desperation and pain and hopelessness and suffering that the people of Wano are facing, we get the Red Scabbards regrouping and coming back together too. We see, in tandem to seeing the state of Wano, we see the Red Scabbards in their desperate state of being imprisoned, of being oppressed, of seeing the suffering of the country and losing their hope and losing their will to fight too, Ashura Doji. In the Red Scabbards, we see so many different forms of Wano reflected back on them, of how they have suffered and how it's affected them too. And these are the heroes of Wano. These are the ones that are bringing Luffy in, bringing freedom to Wano. These are the ones that are the vassals of Odin, the ones that are fighting to maintain his dream after he's gone. And we see the suffering of Wano and the people reflected back in them at the same time. Back and forth between those two, that's great storytelling. Then we see them get into an even more desperate state as they finally band together. Their hope is restored just like the people, and they're ready to fight for their country, and they're left alone. We see their desperate state and the hopelessness Kaido and Orochi have caused. And what's the common denominator of the Red Scabbards and the people of Wano? Luffy, the bringer of freedom. Not to mention the entire Odin flashback and the Red Scabbard story and the betrayal. And follow all that up with Luffy and company coming in to fight. And we got the flashback of Roger and their whole journey. And we have the panel, and he laughed. We got the characters that we want to root for and we want to see their freedom being brought. We got the emotions that comes with all of the darkness in this world and us wanting to see that darkness pushed back. We added so much to the lore of the world and to the core story, to the story that's at the core of all of this, Roger and Luffy's inspiration to go find the One Piece. We got so much built up on all of that. Including even as we build up to the raid and during the raid, we got so many great moments for our Straw Hats as well, even though they've been separated for a lot of the arc, and even when they got together, it was still just like not very Straw Hat centric of an arc. We still got some awesome moments from them, incredible action and hype moments with Zoro, great emotions and power-ups with Nami, great moments of action and dialogue for Usopp to shine, great moments of action with Sanji, as well as building more on what we got from him in Whole Cake Island. Chopper the Doctor and Chopper the Monster got some great spotlights on him. We got a new demon form from Robin. Frankie, who was totally underutilized, also got some great dialogue as well as some good action running over a Yonko's face. Brooke, always the best support character, was great in support as well as helping us find the poneglyphs. Jinbei got some awesome action as well as getting to see him interact with the crew in fun ways. And of course, so many great moments for Luffy. I do wish that we got more spotlight on the Straw Hats and more attention to them, and I'll talk about that when we're in our negatives section, but we did get some really good moments from each of them. Did we get enough for the length of the arc? I would say no, but again, we'll talk about that in a minute. As well as the crew working together, which even though those moments were small too, boy oh boy did I miss this. We also got some really great dino physics lessons, stuff that I didn't learn in school, and it's a crime really. Not to mention the minks and the scabbards got to work together to hold off Kaido. And when they used Odin two-sword style to reopen the wound that Odin gave him so long ago, tears, I tell you, tears. Yamato also got a chance to hold off Kaido and helped Momo in his development hugely. Momo had some amazing moments of him gaining his courage and then his power and his identity, and he really came into his own. Not to mention all the tiny awesome moments and gags littered throughout this arc. And of course, I got to experience Gear 5th, real time. I caught up with this manga right before chapter 1044 hit, right when Looney Tunes Luffy, Sun God Nika arrived. And what a time to join the fandom. What an awesome experience that was for me. Not to mention all the tiny things that happened all throughout this arc that just add a lot of intrigue that I'm so excited to learn more about. Kid fought off Big Mom's crew and lost his arm doing that, but he got what he wanted. What was it? Kid fought Shanks at one point, so you're connected to Shanks too? Orochi wanted Vagabond next time as the CP0 are coming in because Doflamingo has been taken out, and so all of the dynamics of the world order and the weapons and all the things is disrupted, and so they come in and they're trying to bargain with Orochi, and he says, I got a battleship last time. Next time I want Vagapunk. Did I say Vagabond again? It's because I'm gonna read Vagabond soonish. Vagapunk. What do you mean? Why do you want him? There's so many little things like that that I know are gonna be built on later that just make me go, what was that? This arc is full of incredible, rich, impactful moments, as well as hype moments and great character dynamics and emotions and all the things. It delivered in so many ways. It brought us so many great things, as well as some disappointments. For me, really where it starts to not deliver so well is once the raid started. The build up to the raid, all great, but once the raid started, there's some great stuff and there's some stuff that I would change a lot. Oda put a lot of focus on making this fight as bombastic as he could, building up things and adding little bits of tension that we didn't really need. It was already a tension-filled fight. The stakes were already laid, and it was just like, also now there's a time limit for us, and also now there's a bomb, and also now there's this, and also now and it's just like, we didn't need it all. As well as beefing up the fight, adding characters to the fight that ended up just ultimately, why did we spend the time on this? And the time spent on characters that ended up they could have been removed and the fight would have been the same, or on false tension moments, all that time could have been spent on the things that we've been building up for years in this arc. Because the thing is, while I actually really appreciate that the Red Scabbards they got so much spotlight in this arc, because I really like having an arc that instead of it being, there's an oppressor, there's terrible things happening, Luffy comes in, he takes down the oppressor, and he leaves, which I love that formula. I think it's fantastic, and Oda finds a different way to do it constantly. However, I like that this time Luffy isn't here to save the day on his own. This time there's a group of people that represent the country of Wano, that are bringing Luffy in and that are fighting alongside of him and that are staying behind to help repair the country, much like Vivi was. I really like that. I love that dynamic, and I love that so much spotlight was put on the Red Scabbards. However, so much spotlight was put on them, and then they really, for me, didn't get nearly enough spotlight in the fight itself. They got some awesome moments in the fight, but I think that they could have been a lot more in this fight. Same for the Straw Hats. We've spent so much time away from them. We've spent so much time not paying attention to them. When they do come into the scene, when they do reunite and they're here to help and to be a part of it, I would have wanted their presence to be a bit more known. I would have wanted their presence to be a bit more influential, effective, important. They had great moments. They did a lot for the fight, but I would have preferred to take the spotlight off. I would have preferred to just remove characters that didn't serve much purpose in the fight, remove points of false tension, and take that time to put it on the major characters. I do think that Kaido's crew was used effectively. I think that they were fine. I don't need a villain's crew to have a massive giant influence or to have huge backstories or to be, I'm fine with Kaido's crew. I think that they were relevant, interesting, personality-filled enough to be the crew of the Yonko. But Big Mom's crew, Big Mom's crew was just there to climb a waterfall and to get knocked down, and then Big Mom is dislodged so we can do something with her, and then they climb up the waterfall to be knocked down, and then Paris Pero was dislodged so that he could do something, and it's just like, and we even had scenes and lines that were like, don't worry, we're a-comin', don't worry, Big Mom's not taken out now. Like, we even had lines that was like, okay, Oda, you are gonna do something with them. Nope, I guess not. And now that we've talked about the fight, let's now talk about the villains, because this is another part that did fall flat for me. Starting with Big Mom. We had a lot of potential in bringing Big Mom here. I was okay with it initially. We could have further explored her backstory. Big Mom is a character that potentially is really cool. Big Mom is a character who has this demeanor. She has this tragic, terrible backstory as a child, and to me, my interpretation of her is that she's an adult locked in a child's mind because of the extreme trauma that she faced as a child. Her mind has kind of blocked off those memories, shut that down. That's why she still views Mother Carmel in a very affectionate way, despite what Mother Carmel, how horrible of a person she was. She still is like, affection, and she's still, so I talked about this in another video, so I guess I don't need to talk about it again, but this is real psychology. A child that goes through such tremendous trauma, their brain will sometimes just completely lock down that part of their memories and their brain, and then that will actually lock up a piece of that person's brain, which will affect their development. So to me, Big Mom comes off as a character who's experienced such great trauma that she's stuck in this childlike state. Unlocking more of that, exploring that more, that could have been cool. Exploring the idea of her and Kaido clashing, and now we have a war between Kaido and Luffy, but also a war between Kaido and Big Mom, and also a war between Big Mom and Luffy, but instead they team up, which, okay, I'll get down with that. They're gonna team up, sure. I'll accept that, because us facing off against two Yonkos, two of the most powerful people in the world, this could get interesting. But what purpose did Big Mom serve in the arc? Basically every scene that Big Mom had in this arc, she could have been taken out and things would have gone fine. Really, she didn't change any scene she was in very much at all, except she kept Law and Kid busy so that Luffy could fight Kaido alone. While we're at it, Kaido, strongest man in the world. We've been waiting on him since he fell out of the sky and came up unscathed. What an interesting character, not to mention little pieces of him like his depression and him constantly wanting to get drunk to escape things, his fixation on death and how death completes a person, and how he has this philosophy of honor in battle, of, you know, if you do die, then it should be an honorable thing. It should be something that makes people talk about you for the rest of the ages. And that's true for the kind of death he wants for himself, as well as true for the kind of death that he wants to give his enemies. His ruthlessness, his brutality, what he's put the people of Wano through, and he doesn't care. And his connection with King and all the implications of their backstory together, all these really interesting things about him that were just all very surface level. I kept waiting for it to get deepened and it just wasn't. And here's the thing, I'm perfectly fine with a character that isn't a Doflamingo level character exploration. Like, every villain doesn't have to be that. Crocodile is still one of my favorite villains in One Piece, and I barely know a thing about the guy. I'm perfectly fine with Kaido with us not deeply exploring him and having a really long backstory and all that, but he was just built up to be the biggest, baddest, most strongest character in all the world. And we got these tidbits that kind of indicated that we were gonna get a lot of depth out of him, and we didn't. So I guess it's on me for having the wrong expectations of this villain. Now, we could potentially really add to him. He could potentially be like an Arlong, who is a villain that's terrible, but not that deep, and then we get a Fishman Island revelation that adds so much to his motivations and his character. And I expect we're gonna get a Rocks flashback or a Garp flashback in the future that could potentially add a whole lot to Kaido's character, and boy oh boy do I hope that's true. But as of right now, that is how I feel about him. He's not all that I expected him to be. So I get, maybe that's on me. But we're gonna talk more about that in a minute when we get to the where does that leave me section. But first, real quick, I wanna complain just a tiny bit more. We had amazing death scenes in this arc for characters that didn't die. And then we had characters that did die that it didn't get the same attention, which felt weird. Then in the aftermath of these death scenes, we got a time jump and like no aftermath at all, pretty much. Like, Kiku lost her brother. Nothing. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure she did mourn, but like, I wouldn't know. Toki! Why was Toki from the Void Century? What was Toki running from? What was Toki trying to get to? There's even a line that says that Toki was looking specifically for Odin. It was for him. Why? What? What do you know? I'm sure that'll be explored later too. That's another thing that I'm sure will be explored too, but we could have gotten a little bit of satisfaction with her character. We could have gotten something. Speaking of potential awesome characters that didn't end up paying off very much. Again, Hiyori, so much potential for her, and she just didn't, so much potential for her. Nothing. That's my fault again. My own expectations, I guess. Speaking of potential, characters with tons of potential that ended up being nothing. Yamato! And then Green Bull. Anyway, I'm tired of complaining. I think this was an awesome, awesome arc with an ending that ended up being, the fight was really bloated and the spotlight didn't seem like it was on the right places for me. And then after the fight was over, it was just like, and I'm done now, bye. And it felt so rushed, felt so disjointed. And so I'm left with this awesome, awesome arc that I think is on par with Oda's best writing, with like a lot of small disappointments that add up to me. Now, I don't like complaining this much because I really did like this arc, but where does that leave me? Now we're in the where does that leave me section. Let me tell you where it leaves me. I think a lot of my problems with Wano, and I put quotes around that because it is subjective and what bothers me won't bother the next person. What really bothers the next person might be a minor thing for me, right? So, quoted problems could have been solved if we had kind of narrowed our focus on the fight and then used that extra focus on the Straw Hats, use that extra time at the end on finishing Wano in a bit more of a satisfying way, because it did feel very rushed to me. I know that there's a lot of speculation that Oda was put on a clock by his editors or by, you know, the powers that be to align the ending of Wano with promotion of Film Red. I don't know if that's ever been confirmed or if it ever will be. If that's true, that makes me really sad because this is a phenomenal arc that I think Oda had a lot of plans for. And if he was pressured to kind of squash those plans or condense those plans to meet a timeline, that's a real bummer because this is Oda's baby that he pours his heart, soul, and health into. So I'd like for him to have the freedom to do it. But where does that leave us? I am of the opinion, and I said this in my last chapter review, that we're not done in Wano. Pluton is still here. This is the first place that Luffy has officially put a flag down since being named Yonko. Odin's journal and the only people that know what's within the journal are still here. There's a lot of stuff left in Wano that feels unfinished, both narratively and just, you know, plot-wise. There's an ancient weapon just chilling. And also, the entirety of Wano was built up to be, the walls are opening, and then they didn't. The borders are opening, and then they didn't. So one would think we're gonna come back and the borders will eventually be opened. I don't think we're done here. And the thing is that Oda is a long game storyteller. He's not the type that tries to condense, which is why I would have loved a longer ending. That said, it's not uncommon for Oda to finish something to seemingly close a plotline in a seemingly unsatisfying way so that he can go do something else, build something else up, add another element, and then come back in a way that's far more satisfying. And I see evidence of that here. I see things that if all of Wano were wrapped up now, there are elements to that wrapping up that I don't think would have been fully satisfying, because at the end of the day, we have a country that's been oppressed in an extraordinary way, in a really major way, for 20 long years. There's a lot of rebuilding that has to be done, and to wrap it up now, I don't know that it could have been as satisfying as it could if we left and then came back later and readdressed some things and closed those doors in a more satisfying way. So I like to think that there's evidence that we're not done at Wano, which makes me think that there's a lot of things that look really unsatisfying now because Oda has intentions to go do something, to go lay some more groundwork so that he can come back and do the things we're wanting in a more satisfying way. Now, that can't be true for everything. At the end of the day, Wano's ending, for me, will always feel rushed, even if we come back and finish some things differently. But I do think that there's a lot of potential, and there's a lot of opinions right now about, you know, Wano being ultimately unsatisfying, and I definitely don't land in that camp. I still think that Wano was a fantastic arc with a compounding amount of small disappointments. So for me, Wano is still it's still a great arc. It could have been one of my top arcs, and for a long time I thought that it would be, and as it stands right now, it's not in my S tier, but I still think that it had some of the best moments in it. Like, it was an incredible arc with so many things done so well. So where do I stand with Wano? Mostly positive. I mostly think this was a great arc with a kind of bloated fight, which I'm not gonna pretend this is our first bloated fight in One Piece. Do you guys remember the wedding cake that went on for forever? Talking about Big Mom again. But I really do hope that Oda ends up coming back around and building on a lot of things that feel unsatisfying now, just like he has done so many times in the past of this story. I think it's still a great arc. I know a lot of people are like really sour on it right now. I still think it was a great arc with some very valid things to complain about. But what did you think? I'm really curious. Where do you land at the end of all this? What do you think of Wano as a whole? And I would really love to hear in the comments your #1 favorite scene, moment, line of dialogue, do it how you will, your favorite part of Wano, and your biggest disappointment. I really enjoy reading through comments on videos like this where we get to have a dialogue about the best and the worst. So let me know what you think. It'll be really interesting to read through. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here, Tuesdays and Thursdays on the second channel, which is always linked in the description. Check out my Patreon if you want. We do live readings of every chapter over there and we have a lot of fun. I'll see you again soon. Bye.